Hello and welcome back. Today this is going to be the second video on Project Ugly Duckling. In the last video, if you remember, we showed you the truck assembled and it was filthy, like all of this, just covered in dirt and grime and muck. Well, got the chassis cleaned up here a little bit, got it back together mostly, looking like a truck again. But today though we're going to look at the axles. I mentioned off and on throughout some of my videos about lubing the axles and give them a good coating of grease. And I've had some questions about how do I go about that. So since I got these nice, lovely, pristine axles here, we're going to go through cleaning them up and then lubing them. The first thing we're going to want to do is we will remove the servo plate, all the links here from the axle, and we'll remove the steering links, the hubs, and the C-hubs. And that will leave us with just our base axle here. Okay, to get to the meat of the axle, we do have to remove some stuff. To remove the servo, it's just these 4 screws right here. Once you remove the servo, you'll find 3 screws total underneath going down through the plate. Just remove those. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way. There we go. You'll also have to unhook the link here from the steering arm. And it's no cleaner under there. Underneath all this filth, dirt, and grime, you'll see 1 screw right there, and 1 right here, and 1 right here. Kind of hard to see here underneath all this dirt, so we clean a little bit away there. There we go. Now we have to remove these 3 screws so we can get this plate out of the way. I want to show you a little tip here. Whenever you have a screw that's all crusted full of dirt like this, and you can't get your hex head down into it, go to your little thing, wherever you keep your little cheap Allen keys that come with like your RTRs. Keep them here in a little box, and find a small one in here. Let's see what we got here. A real small one. Aha, here we go. Like this right here. And then just take it and put it down the heads and kind of waller it around just a little bit. That way you can clean the dirt out of the heads so you can get your hex head down in it. And actually get a grip on it without having to worry as much about rounding out the holes. There we go. Once you have the plate out of the way, it makes it easier to get this 3-link mount. You want to go ahead and take it out. And then we'll remove these screws here and move those aside. You don't really have to take these out, these 2 right here, but it just makes life easier. So let's do that. After the links are out of the way, next we'll have to remove the hubs and then the C-hubs. Hubs just have a screw on the top, a screw on the bottom. Be warned, there will be some bushings in here. If you have never had these off before, they may fall out. They look like little top hats. Over here on this side, you'll notice these screws are different. Whoever had this before, changed the screws. I would be putting button heads back in here for clearances, so that way it doesn't rub the inside of the wheel. But let's go ahead and take it apart. Here are those little top hat bushings I was telling you about. They come out of the hole right here. Okay, next up is the C-hubs. Screw on the front, screw on the back. Let's take that apart. Okay, after you get the C-hubs off, you just set them aside. And now, you have the axle pretty much ready to take apart. I always leave the drive shaft on until I go to pull the pinion gear out, because this way it keeps it in the case once I split the cases. So, to take these apart, you have 4 screws here in the middle. Just got to take those out. The 2 top ones go into the upper 3-link mount, and the bottom ones have nuts on them that are held inside the case. I've taken out the screws to hold the 3-link on, and now I need to take out the bottom screws. But before I do that, what I want to do is go ahead and knock some of this dirt off. Because once I take out the bottom screws, which are shorter than the top screws by the way, the case can split. And it's still filthy, it's still covered in dirt and grime, and I don't want to take a chance of exposing the internals to that. So take an old toothbrush, grab an old one that you've used in the past, or buy a new one just for this purposes, or I guess if you still live with your siblings, feel free to use theirs. But it's going to go and knock the loose dirt off of it. Be surprised how much comes off just doing this. Now the majority of it's off. Now what we want to do next is take this to a sink, use a little bit of dish soap and our brush again, and just scrub it real good to get rid of all the excess. As you can tell, the axle is much cleaner now. You can see if there's any cracks in it, anything like that needs addressed. This housing looks good. She's a little scuffed up on the bottom, but not bad. So we will go ahead and just finish drying this up. Now that our axle housing is dry, we're ready to take out those bottom bolts and move on to separating the cases. Now we're ready to separate this case. I'm willing to bet this case has never been separated, given the lack of maintenance that was done to the rest of the truck, the lack of cleaning and care. So, it's hard to tell what we're going to find inside. Let's take a look and see. Ew, that's nasty. Well, looks like things were greased. Looks like it's the factory grease in there, and it has had some water in it sometime. As you can tell by the gray milkiness of it, but looks like it did the job of keeping the gears nice and safe. So what we'll do next is we'll clean this up. We can just go ahead and lift this whole assembly out. Hopefully, maybe, yep. Like so, and we will set it aside. I think on these ones, actually given how caked in it is in there, I will go ahead and just wipe the grease out, clean the grease out real well out of the middle, and then go with the toothbrush, soap, and water method to clean these tubes, because that is a lot of junk caked in there. Let's take a paper towel here, just swipe out the inside of this, do a little finger sweep. The reason why we're getting the grease out of here is because I don't want it in my toothbrush bristles there. Okay. And then on this other one here, we're going to go ahead and remove the pinion gear. Pull out the pinion gear. Just going to go ahead and set it aside right there for now. And clean the inside here out. Get all this nasty old grease out. To get the rest of the grease out, I sprayed some alcohol on a paper towel here. I'm going to go ahead and run it around inside there too. And get down the edges over here. And now we'll just take these to the sink and scrub them out with the toothbrush and soap. Like I said, normally I wouldn't do that. Normally I'd just take alcohol and rub down the insides. But with that much crap just crusted in there like that, it's going to take more than just a little light cleaning. And the reason why you want this clean, though, is because if there's any dirt left in here, it can get in your fresh grease, contaminate it, and end up really shortening the life of the whole thing. Before we do that, though, we do want to go ahead and knock these bearings out, because they will need cleaned as well. Next time you see these cases, they'll be sparkling clean on the inside and outside. Okay, the case halves have been cleaned and dried. They look a lot better on the inside. Now, here where the bearings sit, you may see some discoloration, especially if your bearings have got a lot of water to them. The outside surface had rusted lightly, because it gets down in the grooves that are eat into the plastic by the dirt going past the bearings, and leaves kind of a little brown and reddish stain there. Nothing we can do about that other than just scrape it out of the plastic, but let's not do that because that'll enlarge the holes. So now we're going to set these aside. It's time to move on to cleaning that gear. For this, I put on a set of gloves because I don't like getting the grease all over my hands, because if I do, it seems like I get on everything else around me. So, a pair of gloves seems the way to go. Let's start with the simple part here. We're going to do these bearings first. To do the bearings, I like to get a paper towel. Put the bearings on it. And then spray them with some alcohol. Let's take this paper towel and we'll rub them around on it, both sides, to get some of the grime off, to get the big chunks off. Do the other one. There we go. I mean, see, they're looking a little bit better. And we'll pick this up. We'll just put the bearing in the middle and we'll rub it with our fingers. Go ahead and wipe down the outside edge of it where the race is. This bearing here, you can tell, has a little bit of a groove in it, but it still feels like it moves freely, so spins real nice. So we're going to keep it. If you're going to see a lot of mud and water running, a good thing to do is replace these bearings with bushings, like bronze bushings. You see them a lot in Tamiya kits. They will help keep out water, and they don't get goop and grime inside of them to eat the inside out. So if you see do a lot of mud running, stuff like that, or play around in water a lot, it's a good investment. This rig right here, I kind of started to put bearing bushings in it, but I didn't have enough, so we're going to stick with the bearings for now. Especially since these ones all seem to be in okay shape. So you just want to make sure that you clean the whole thing. Both sides, around the outside edge, and then in the middle. And this bearing here, around the outside edge, is nice and shiny and smooth. Okay, after the bearings, we're going to move on to the gears. I'm going to take the pinion gear here, and I'm just going to wipe off what grease is on it. Make sure you get down into each one of the teeth. Wipe those too. Now sometimes with these, I'll take alcohol and clean them too. This depends on how well the grease comes off. This one looks like it's coming off nicely since it's original axial grease and there wasn't a lot of extra grease on it. And what was there had turned into kind of that slime, so it just basically slid right off. Make sure you do the back side of the gear, shaft as well. And then once you're done, look at the teeth. Make sure they're all in good shape. But it's not a nick, just some dirt on it. Yep, all those look in good shape. Not too wore. The top of the teeth still have a flat edge to them. If they're pointed, that's not a good sign. Shaft looks good, so we'll set it aside. Now for our main gear here. Let's go ahead and pull the axle shafts first. I have a feeling we'll have a hard time getting the bearings off of the center section there, but ones on the shaft, we'll go ahead and pull them off. We'll clean those just like we did the last two. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, the bearings are clean. Now it's time for the shafts. Spray them down with some alcohol here. I do like alcohol because it takes off grease and grime really well, and it's cheap. There's some great cleaners out there on the market, but alcohol, you get a big bottle of it for $1 at the local stores, and a little spray bottle for $1, good to go. And look at that, just a little spray, quick rub, feel like grime and stuff coming off that axle. Okay, there's that axle shaft cleaned up. Just a little bit of rust on it, but not bad. Go ahead and inspect it, make sure it's not bent anywhere. Looks good. Okay, let's move on to the other one. Do it the same way. Pay particular attention to where the bearings sit. Make sure you get it nice and clean. Out here where it goes into the drive cups. And where it goes into the locker. Okay, there we go. Both of those are clean. Now let's move on to the center section, to the center gear. Okay. To make it easier to handle, I'm going to go ahead and use an old paper towel here to wipe the grease and grime off of it as much as possible. Okay, now that we got most of the grease off, let's try to remove these bearings. It came right off. So that one was kind of a surprise, good happy surprise. Anyway, let's finish cleaning up here on this gear and locker assembly. Just like on the pinion gear, go around each tooth, slide your fingernail through it there to clean the grease out of it, and check all the teeth for wear. This has a nice uniform wear pattern all the way around. The teeth are still squared off too, no sharp points, so that means there's still a lot of life left in this. Oh, what's this? Oh, just grease. Okay. But there we go. Now we'll clean the bearings And we'll be ready to reassemble this after we get these bearings done. Do these bearings just like the other ones, spray them with alcohol, scrub each side, scrub where the race goes on the outside edges. These bearings look nasty, but they feel smooth, so we'll end up sticking with them for now. But you can see what I mean by looking at the edge of that. I don't know if you can see that or not, how discolored it is, the way it rode in there, and the grease or the mud and muck got in around it. I mean, it looks pretty nasty, but she's cleaning up nice, so. And like I said, it feels nice and smooth, so we'll stick with it for now. I've seen bearings a lot worse than this come out of the inside of these axles. Now time for reassembly. We'll start with this piece of the axle. We'll take the two bearings that we took out earlier, and we'll drop them in. One comes through from this side, and one comes through from the other side. Okay. Now we'll take our center gear here, and we will put on the bearings for it. Next we'll take our shafts and their bearings and slide them on. Like so. Okay, now we have everything ready. So now I need to get my grease. Okay, when it comes to greasing everything, I like to use my good old classic marine grease. Talked about this on some other videos. Got this tube. It came in a tube I just put in this baby food jar. Good high quality marine grease. This way it keeps water away and keeps everything well lubricated, because I do like to play in the water. To spread the grease, I'm just using a little wooden applicator stick here. Got this at the craft store. Whole big bag of them. So what I'm going to do here with the pinion is I'm going to start by putting a little bit of grease on the back of the pinion. You do not have to do this. I like to do this with the marine grease because this is where water can come through, and hopefully this helps make another little barrier to keep water at bay. So I've got my greased up pinion and just going to drop it down in here, making a mess as I do so, because that's the way it goes with grease. There we go. And it's through. Got grease all over my fingers like I said I would. Just use my extra piece of paper towel here to wipe it off, just so I don't get it on everything else. Okay, that's pretty easy and done, huh? Next we're going to take our center section here, and I'm going to grease it pretty heavy here on one side. Like so. Now let's take and drop it into the housing, pushing it in so it lines up with the pinion gear. Okay. Give it a little spin there. Okay, I'm just going to add a little more grease to it. So I like to keep a lot of grease on the gear. Like so. Okay. And now we're going to take our axle shafts here and go ahead and push them in. A lot of people do this after they're done, putting the case back together. I like to go ahead and do it now, because I like to put a little bit of extra grease in here. I like to put a little bit right here around this bearing. And I like to put a little bit on this side. Same spot around that bearing. And a little bit down here on the ends of the shafts on the back side of this bearing. Don't worry, once you put the case on and spin it, this will get all the way around the axles, around the shafts. This is just another way to help hopefully keep a little bit more water out. Okay, there we go. Now we just take our other side, axle half, and we put them together. You may have a little bit of grease come out somewhere along the seams, but that's normal. Okay, now we're ready to put the screws back in it. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put up my tub of grease and clean up my paper towels. Now that we're ready to reassemble this, I'm going to get my 4 axle bolts. I'm going to take the 2 short ones and their nuts, and I'm going to clean those up real quick. Now that we're ready to reassemble this, I'm going to take my bolts I cleaned up, the 2 short ones, and the 2 nuts. I could put new hardware in here because this looks kind of funky. It has a little bit of rust on it, but that's okay. I don't mind the way it looks, and it'll help add a little bit of detail to it. I mean, this truck's probably getting a Toyota body, and let's be honest about it, the old Toyotas, they had some rust in them. So anyway, I'm going to start by putting my nuts in the back of the axle here. Make sure you put them in the right way. Oops, I got there. I just put that one in upside down. I was just doing that to show you. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, make sure they slide in their little holes there. Okay, now once they're in place, I'll go ahead and put the short ones in from the other side. So I'm going to take and tighten these down. Not going to tighten them all the way, just enough to get them loosely snug. Like so. Now, before we come out our upper bolts, we have to go clean up our 3-link mount. Do it just like I did the others. It'll be a toothbrush, some soap, and some water. Just some little scrubbing and rinse it off. I cleaned up that 3-link mount, but I'm not happy with the hole in the middle of it. I don't know if you can see it here on this or not, but it's wallowed out pretty good. So I'm just going to throw that away. Luckily, I have another one. This one has next to no use on it, so it's just off another one that we converted to a 4-link in the front. Since we're staying 3-link on this, we're going to go ahead and put this one on in place of the old one. Put our long screws through the top. Go ahead and start that one into the plastic 3-link mount. A couple threads, so I'm going to do for now. Get the other one in. Same way. And then just go and tighten them down. Like before, I'm going to make them snug but not tight. You don't want to over tighten these, and I like to get the whole thing together. Go ahead and get the C-hubs on it before I tighten these down. So everything's made nice and tight. Next up, we'll take the drive shaft. We'll slide it on the pinion. And put the screw through it to hold it in place. This I will tighten down. Okay. Now we got that nice and tight. And we got this all apart. Let's go ahead and down this drive shaft here. It holds this onto this rotating piece. There's a screw inside there that sometimes works loose. So let's just go ahead and tighten it up while we're here. There we go. Okay. Because if that works loose, you can end up tearing this shaft piece up. And it's easier to go ahead and tighten it up now than have it break out on the trail and try to get home. Let's give the axle a wipe down, just make sure nothing oozed out of any of the cracks so far. And now it is time to go and clean up our steering assembly. So we'll start by taking this apart. Take off the wheel nuts. Okay, put those aside. Now then, we just got to remove the steering arm here. Let's go ahead and get this knuckle off. There we go. Pull the screw out and set it aside. Now we need to go and remove the hex. When these are here, they lock on, so they have a little Allen head right there. Just got to go in and loosen it up. Okay, once you got it loose, just pull it off. Little pin in behind here. You knock it out. Make sure you don't lose this. This one is filthy, hard to get out, but there she is. Slide out the stub axle, and you're left with the hub with the bearings in it. These can be a little difficult sometimes to get out. Well, not the outer one. On it, you just come through the inside and give it a little push, and it should come right out. Now this inner bearing here can be a real pain to get out, but just take your time, work slow, and you can pop it on out. If you feel that you're going to damage it, or if it doesn't need a lot of cleaning, just go ahead and just clean this off in here real good. Like I said, normally you wouldn't need to worry about it, but with all the gunk and muck that's been inside here, I want to pull this out and make sure I do a good job cleaning it up. Okay, there's that side disassembled. So we'll just move these parts away. We'll break down the other side, and then we'll go clean everything up just like before. Soap, water, toothbrush. Now that we have our steering pieces all cleaned up, we're going to go ahead and reassemble them, just doing the reverse of what we did to take them apart. Well, we now have our axle back together. We got our C-hubs on, our hubs hooked up, our steering's on. Everything's here except I did not put the servo mount back on because I plan on running a metal 3-link instead of the stock plastic one. I just don't have it yet, so you'll have to go on, we'll go ahead and put it on and then put the servo plate on over top of it. It just makes it easier to get to the screw right here. But there is one more thing we need to do. I have some moose slick here from Cal RC. This is one of the older design cans, but one thing I like to do is go ahead and spray just a little bit right in here. Do a little bit on the other side here. And right here in this drive shaft knuckle. Moose Slick is a really great thing. It is a silicone lube. It dries quickly. It helps keep out dirt and water. So just a good little thing for those moving parts. And give everything a good little spin. And we are good to go. I hope you found this video useful. I hope this helps you get your axles lubed up on your SCX10s. Like I said, it doesn't even look like the same axle anymore. It's clean, it's pretty, it's not all crusted in filth and grime. But there you have it. A nice easy thing to do. This is something you should do to your axles after any hard, heavy runs. You know, take them apart, make sure everything's still good shape inside. If you don't abuse it with a lot of water, you can usually get by not doing this till the end of the season. But still something you should do from time to time. Or if you're feeling grit or grime inside of whenever you're turning them, if they sound like they're clicking or clacking, worth checking out. The joints, I spray those after every run. You know, the steering here and the drive shaft. Just all the moving parts, even the pivot points on the suspension arms. This helps keep everything happy. The next time we will be tackling this filthy transmission, so make sure you join us for that. We'll show you how to tear it apart and lube everything in it. You pretty much know the basic steps now for cleaning them up, so it'll be pretty easy and should be a quick run through. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and drop them below or hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any of those. Email, it's all good. Links are down below. I thank you for watching, and until next time, happy RCing.